correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, maybe a second paramedic unit come out of this station. And so there would be additional, places for them.
We should probably look at what we added to our current fire station and how packed it is now and use that as knowing how much bigger that other one's gonna grow, because it's packed, that fire 31's packed like from end to end.
Well, one of the things you mentioned here is you're looking at potentially eliminating the need for a third fire station.
Well, in
Pushing
the,
it off.
or in the,
Yeah,
Re-
or
It-
or eliminating.
It's
Yeah.
this made it sound like. Yeah, somewhere in here, I thought I read that, yeah, you may not need a third fire station if you design this
So my
one.
thoughts on that were that we've kind of
that would be nice.
almost quartered the city in need, right? So
Yeah,
we have
just
this over here
triangle.
because we're 7 minutes, my street is the furthest away, so this meets the needs of all the south end and the west area into Shoreline. But it doesn't seem to me that that will benefit any of the growth that's going on that north end of the city.
That northeast
And
side.
that we'll end up needing a station over there, especially when we've got, we don't have. We'll have the hospital, we'll
Yeah.
have all those things going on over there, so I tend to think that we'll still end up with a station over there.
But see, I would expect that, and again, you can tell me I'm wrong, which I probably am. I would expect once it's not a freestanding ER and it becomes a full hospital, your transport would probably go down.
So one of the reasons why the location on the south worked for the second station is the transports from the ER are not of an urgent
Right.
time frame. So they're already stabilized. So it can take, we don't have to respond in the, the 5 minutes or whatever to get there. We can take a little longer to get.
You're not going
there.
sirens on.
They already have doctors and everything stabilizing the patient, where it's transporting them to this point. So that's why it works by providing the quicker response time on the east and south side of the city at this location, even though a lot of the transport traffic is going to happen on the north side of the city.
I feel like it's very naive of us to think that we wouldn't need a third fire station in any point in the future, like.
Yeah, and I don't think we're taking that off the table.
Right.
It's just we can delay it or maybe prevent it. We don't know, but I wouldn't take it off.
But depending on what the cost, you don't want to overbuild this one if we know for sure we're gonna need a third one for.
Yeah, so as far as how the pieces fit, maybe I know Aaron's got his hand up, so maybe Aaron and Joe can the operational.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm outside, so you might get a little bit of wind or some traffic. First off, I apologize for not being there tonight, but thanks for letting me attend remotely. The question about the station, I think we've discussed it quite a few times before. I feel very confident. Well, I feel pretty confident that at full build out, we would need 3 fire stations to manage full build out of our city. However, if we don't build the stations correctly, we're going to end up with a 4th and a 5th fire station to meet the needs. Most likely what we're going to need is more ambulances, more coverage for ambulance. And so to build the stations large enough that we could put 2 ambulance companies in there, maybe an additional engine company, or as the needs grow with the city, it saves us the need to build 4 and 5 stations and even 6 stations into the future. So that's what the intent is by building them a little bit larger and having that room to grow into. This station that we're looking at now, to have that room to grow into, I believe will be close to filling that up before we need that 3rd station. And that's with a fire prevention, maybe adding some inspectors, adding a fire prevention and education division, maybe some training help during the days as the department grows. So there's a lot of growth that we can expect. We just don't know when it's coming. And as Brody had mentioned, the cost later down the road is going to be a little bit more expensive. So I think that's just kind of where we're at right now, is to get the feeling of the council on how they wish to proceed with the growth and to manage that.
So at build out, let's say we have, I don't know, however many people we think we're going to have. How many ambulances and fire trucks do we anticipate it needing to cover that population? Like, have we made that?
I feel like there's gotta be some
Density and location.
very educated statistics somewhere of people who are way smarter on this than
Agree.
Right.
That's one of
those of us.
So-
You know, I go straight to what we're dealing with right now with our landlocking issue and the fact that we are desperately trying to find land. So to me, it makes sense that we would make this adjustable for growth rather than try to find another plot that we can. put
Yeah.
So
a
I
fourth or
agree.
fifth on.
I guess my question is, you know, if there's somewhere a statistic that says, hey, for
this amount of.
55,000 people,
in this
you
square
need,
miles. Yeah.
you're anticipated to get good coverage, 5 ambulances, somewhat evenly distributed.
There's
throughout.
gotta be a study
Yeah.
somewhere that says.
So if I could add to that, it's based upon demographic. And it really is what kind of things do you have in your city? Do you have homeless shelters? Do you have multiple hospitals? What do you have? And so where I'm basing this off of loosely is what we've determined or what we've thought or anticipated our build out to be is close to from what I understand, the second largest city in Davis County at full build out. And so when we look at that, 60,000, 65,000 population in 10 square miles, the population density, I'm trying to compare this more to what I see happening to our neighbors at the east with Layton City. They've got 4 stations right now. They're staffing 6 ambulances, and they have 4 engines that are running, and they're running, they're probably getting close to 8,000 calls a year. So as far as an actual study that says, here is what you need for so many residents, there's nothing out there that is an official study, nothing that I've seen from NFPA or anything like that will tell you exactly what those numbers are.
Let me give you an idea.
Because I mean, Layton, they're looking at they're at like 90, 100,000 people right now.
So
Yeah,
that-
but
that
they're
will-
also a very different size city. We're
Right.
Under 10 square miles, so
Yeah,
that's to play it back, the density of development and the distribution, because we're talking about a lot of industrial on the north side. Depending on how that goes, it
Maybe
could
it'll be a
mean
small
more
fire station.
or less.
Sure.
So we just
Well-
don't know right now, and
That's where I feel like I'm missing data to make an informed decision here.
Right.
So I think that
So-
the real question is, what do we do? Understanding what we do know.
Sure, it's always better to build bigger and try and plan for the future. I agree with all of that, but what I don't see is I don't see the data that says, here is what we anticipate us needing for 65,000 people, assuming, some population of older generation, this population of kids. I'm not seeing that data that says this is a good decision. I agree, we probably need this space, and we probably need, how many ambulances we run to our current station? 2?
no, we run one.
Just one, but we do have a backup.
We do have a backup.
And so would this one be 2 ambulances or an ambulance and a backup?
Right now, it will be 1 ambulance and 1 backup, 1 engine and 1 backup engine with the
Right,
ability
if
to
we,
grow to
if we
staff
build
those two.
bigger,
But that's a paramedic. Is that, they're their own
So-
entity though, right? Paramedics.
Paramedics are on any,
So will it have a paramedic unit there also?
there's a potential for growth for that too as
Yeah.
well.
So that's something we gotta keep in mind is that if we end up with a paramedic unit there, because we didn't anticipate.
See, a lot of this
Everyone.
is trying to look into a crystal ball and figure out what's going on. And I can do everything I can to try to find some existing data or something that's going to be close to, what would help you make a decision. I just don't know if there's anything that's going to be completely accurate. And Layton City, I mean, when I was there, it's 26 square miles is about where they're sitting. So their population density is a little bit different. And they also have land for station 5 and up to another station, a station 6. So yeah, this is just a
We're not really
discussion.
asking for perfectly accurate, just something that kind of gives us an idea of,
I have data saying I need another station.
yeah.
And I can get behind that data and I can justify that data.
Yeah.
But I don't have data saying I mean, if we're gonna build a 3rd station anyway, does it make sense to put all of this into that and then the 3rd station just ends up being,
I feel like if he's got, like, I mean, we've talked about this by breaking down the time frames, and he's brought this in multiple times, the chief's brought this in multiple times, was that pretty confident we're gonna need a third
No,
station.
that's what I was getting to, is we
Yes.
know already through the
We
heat
know.
maps they've shown us that there is gonna be an
Sure,
area that's
we're
on
gonna
the
need a
fringe
third.
of service, even on the new location.
So we should plan for
New
that
house,
one,
New growth.
for that
So
area.
does it make sense
of
to
service
make this one even bigger, to make that one smaller, or are we still have to build that
Makes sense
exactly
for
the
us to
same?
make this one bigger because we have more land accessible.
That's, yeah, over
We
there.
already are discussing a lot of trade issues when it comes to the other piece of land. And I think our vast amount of growth is this south
South side,
side,
yeah.
the south and west. I mean, I drove forever down there the other day and it's just expanding. You know, we know how many acres we're dealing with there. I think we've also got a lot of really young families and that tends to be accidents with children. If my experience has been anything
Just
to gauge it by, it's probably just mine.
You
But I
know, the
think
one thing I'd
that-
like to bring up too is, you know, I was around and when we built the station down there, the station we're in currently. And I remember we built that as a bigger station to grow into, and at that time, everybody thought we'll never grow into this, not true. And now we've exceeded that and we're overgrowing that, so it's kind of one of those to look at that as well, that. You know, growth happens quicker than anticipated than what we anticipated.
Now we're
as
building
well.
wood wall bedrooms in the gym area.
And
I don't think we anticipated having a paramedic unit in the.
Yeah, and-
that's,
Exactly.
yeah.
and
Yeah.
something,
I'll-
and this might help you, Jordan. So really what it boils down to is some, fire stations at their core have certain core components regardless, right? They have a bay.
Yep.
Right? And the bay has, for the apparatus you need, they have the residential area
Mhm.
and the locker area and the training area. I should say workout area.
And a fire pole.
Yeah.
And sometimes a fire pole.
Fantastic.
But really what we're talking about here is essentially, do we want to plan to have a second paramedic unit running in the city? It would probably have to come out of this building because there's no room at the other building. And then also, we'll probably have an expansion of our fire prevention unit, which is our fire marshal and fire prevention education components into the schools and the community and that sort of thing. There's really not a space for that. We have, enough office space down here for our current staffing. But, and then some training space area. If we don't build a training room on this building, then there's all the training room has to go to the main station, and then there's, this back and forth of our staffing going back and forth. So those are really the add-ons that we're addressing right now.
And
on
even
this
at
building.
this proposal, it's still 25% smaller than the existing station, it looks like.
It is.
So I'm
That was
gonna-
one of the,
One thing that I'm
One-
concerned about is just that. We can say, sure, we want training space so that I don't have to go back and forth, but we need the same training space because. We are kind of built out bigger where we're at, and I don't think that every station needs that much. And so the question would be as well. If we want to plan for growth in the bays. At what point do we say? We would grow out and expect a new station at this point, because that's, I think, the limitation. I think it's great to spend some time and say we want to get the most out of a building. The building by itself has a set cost. And if anytime you add a building, you have a big ask to start that. You're right.
Whole
So
skeleton of it.
so adding is a lot cheaper, but what point do we say at this point, it doesn't become a logical station, it becomes a need for just a new station.
So I have, like you said about, there's more kids, elderly, kind of over there, and on the north side, there's more industrial and. I guess historically, correct me on this, you know better than I. Residential is more of a need for paramedic, ambulance. Not saying they don't have fires, but they more predominantly have paramedic ambulance, but industrial tends to have more fires.
They have a different call volume, so it's, I mean, you're not gonna have your sick person and falls, you know, with the, like you have with the elderly or the residential. You're gonna
Yeah.
have more of your traumatic injuries, so it's a
So
different
the-
dynamic, so you're still gonna have a need for medical and you're still gonna
Yeah.
have a need for fire.
I'm not saying you're not, I'm just saying the more predominant need that you would have in that general area. Like if it's a neighborhood that's over there, so you would more likely need another paramedic or another ambulance team rather than another fire truck.
Hard to
Let
say,
me-
on that one. You're still gonna need the, as the population grows, you're still gonna need, in the industrial side, it's.
Well, we're talking about the south side. On the north side, you'd likely need another fire truck to add,
And you'd probably need another ambulance over there.
yeah,
as
for
well.
more traumatic scenarios over in that area.
Right.
So it's
Yeah,
more, what are, oh, sorry, chief, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, the driving factors behind a third station are gonna be call volume and response times. And so by being able to grow within a second station, that might most likely delay the need for a third station. But like I said, the drivers are call volume, much like I showed you with the second station, the call volume and response time.
Well, the reason why I'm asking this is, so one of the things, what we're considering is if we're gonna need like another bay for possibly another ambulance or paramedic. Would we need to consider another bay for another fire truck, or is that not something that would be necessary in that general location?
I don't think
I
in this
the
plan we're,
four bays would be sufficient.
Sufficient?
yeah, I don't think in this plan, I think we want to just have enough bay space. Because adding bay space with the masonry.
I think we're
block-
set on 4 bays.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have like an expansion of bay space down here.
What I'm looking at is a request, we had an initial estimate of 12,000 square feet, we're looking at a potential increase of 5,200 square feet, so what are we gaining and what are our costs? That's what I would
Yeah,
like to know.
thank you.
That's what I need to know to make a decision. What does the extra
What's the
5,000
ex-
space get us and what is the?
We didn't get an aerial, nothing.
What's the expectation that we gain in that space? Is it just housing? Because, or is it housing and office in that much space?
I think it's a little bit of everything. So the initial estimate was just estimated at about 12,000 square feet. Once we got everything put together, it came in a little bit more than we needed, or more than I anticipated originally. And some of that was off of some information that I'd received about our current station, is how I built the estimation. And so the estimation was off a little bit. We're sitting at this right now, the 17,130. I'm not sure, I don't have the number right in front of me.
We're so
That
close.
is, yep, 134, 132.
Yeah, there you go. 130.
There we go. That right there is where we're at with everything we feel like we need for the station and the future growth of that station. Chances are, I don't have a crystal ball, and I'm also not into building fire stations. This is the first one I've done. So, I mean, in 20 years, we might likely outgrow this one too. So, but as it sits right now, that's where we're at. I think the additions, we added the extra bedrooms for that extra staff. We have 8 bedrooms right now in our current station. We added 10 to this one. We have 6 bays, truck bays in our current station. We only added 4 to this one, which it gives us the room for that growth. We did add some offices for the growth of the administrative side. And we also added a training area or training room area. So that's kind of where we're at. And I think the idea, I can definitely go back and get some more, try to find some data. I know that some of the data that I will find is that almost every fire chief that has built a fire station had wished that they had built it bigger. So,
So it's,
So-
so it sounds like it's not necessarily, I'm hearing 2 different things. I'm hearing that we need the additional square footage for future growth, but I'm also hearing that we just underestimated the size and this is adequate size. But I
the
still need,
12,000
but we
square
still
feet
need
was
costs.
under,
Yeah, we don't.
What's
Okay,
the
and the cost-
expectation for how much this adds?
okay, right now, we don't know. We brought we brought Circ Construction on, and they're the ones that are going to be doing the estimation to get us
We'll come
a
back.
good ballpark figure. So we can come back with the cost on where we're going to be with that 17,000 square feet. But, and that's where we're at. So we don't have a cost, and I definitely don't want to underestimate that.
All right, so we're about triple what we expected to spend on this discussion tonight. So seems how we know we're gonna come back with cost, I'm gonna delay that to the next discussion for the next work
Can
session.
we also get a layout view of like
Yeah.
an aerial?
Yeah,
We
when we
will-
come back, we'll have all that.
Well, this is
And move
asking
on
about
to our
space.
next item.
Get that.
Okay. Item D, discussion regarding proposed day-to-day
Big
operations
shrinking
of
things.
Syracuse Museum. I'm gonna let Brody start with this.
Okay, so. As outlined in my memo, the Syracuse Museum Foundation has come to us with some thoughts on how we can run the museum. We've made known to them what the current ordinance says. As I mentioned in my memo, for many years, the city has not had a functioning museum board as per our ordinance. I think what has gone on is the city has just felt like there is a foundation over there. They're doing a good job over there. Let's just let them do their thing over there.
But in violation of our ordinance.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's violation, but it's not exactly the way it was designed. So, I think what we did is we kind of deferred to their decisions and went along with it. So, in the meantime, you know, in the same ordinance, it also says the city's responsibilities are maintaining the building, the insurance, the utilities, that sort of thing, and any staffing support to achieve the functions of that ordinance. And so we have essentially been doing that, what the city's responsibilities are. And so, as you know, we've recently put in a curator that was originally part-time, now it's full-time. That's actually the return of a curator. There used to be one prior to 2008. And so with that,
Neville.
was her last name? Was it? Yeah. Yeah, so we've got the curator back in to help serve as a staff support to the museum. So we have gone back and said, okay, our current curator has left to gone on to bigger and better things. And we thought this was a good time to revisit and see, you know, anytime a position leaves, it's a good time to go back and you know, revisit to see if what we're doing is the best way to do it, or if we need to make some changes. Well, in so doing, we look in the ordinance and we say, hey, there's some things in here that are not exactly how we're running it, how it was originally designed. So we said, hey, we're the administration, it's our job to make that right. So we called the members of the museum foundation in and said, hey, we've got this ordinance here, and this is how we think we need to run it. What it is a city board appointed by the mayor with advice and consent of the council. And as outlined in the ordinance, they have duties of running the day-to-day operation of the museum. Museum Foundation does have issue with that. They've made that clear to us, and they can, you know, I'm assuming they're here to speak to that. And maybe propose a different way to run it. But we told them, well, we can't change that. I mean, we're not the legislative body, and it's an ordinance. So if it needs to be run a different way, then you got to talk to the legislative body. But there are some concerns with their proposal, and which was outlined in the packet. And I put those in the memo. And they're not necessarily like concerns that it's the wrong way or the right way. It's concerns that if the city's going to put significant investment in the museum, do they want to have any say on how it's operated? And does the community, does the citizenry have the right to retain some control of how the museum is operated? Or do we just want to cut a check to the museum and say, you guys do it how you want with it? You know, so there's some decisions here on what's best with the public's money on how to use that in a museum. Those are kind of like the foundational decisions of how that's got to be made here. So everything else is in the packet there. I just wanted to kind of give
You have a packet, I'd like to open it up for discussion.
As I'm looking at this, I feel like there's multiple different issues with each kind of variation of how this thing is proposed or could or is recommended to be operated. I think when you say it's in violation of the ordinance or they're operating in violation, I think that's probably pretty.
No, I don't say they were. I'm just saying,
Okay.
we're not doing what the
I
ordinance
was gonna say, 'cause I
says.
feel like that's on our side that we.
No, it's
decided later.
totally on us.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I just want to.
Oh, no.
Okay.
We're not doing what this
We're
ordinance
not.
says.
And
It's not all of
then, and then as I see it, I just feel like it's very conflicting to have two separate boards, you know, a board and.
Well, it seems redundant.
Yeah, I just don't see that that makes a lot of sense. But then on the flip side of that, when you have city resource contributed to it, obviously the effort from the board would be to kind of stack the committee so that they could make, you know, a majority decision, which the fact that you guys have done so much service for all these years and really been the heart, soul and everything of the museum is just, it would make not a lot of sense for me to have that just completely disappear and have that control, authority, whatever, oversight kind of disappear. That being said, I kind of wonder, and I know this is like, I mean, I don't know what you're alluding to in regards to the curator position, but it makes some sense to me to say, you know, would we want to just give up the position, make that a contribution back to the museum, let them operate it with whatever they see fit, whether that's two part-time employees that they manage or take care of and decide how they are scheduled. And then we wash our hands of it, because I just could not see us having a full-time equivalent there operating with us having absolutely no oversight over that position. I think that's where it's been a hard time for staff to manage a person there, plus not really be their staff.
I mean,
time card issues, all
what is
that.
our oversight over that position? Like,
Well, it's hours, it's benefits. It's
well, I
insurance,
understand
all
that, but like, what are we gonna tell them?
Like managerial oversight. as far as-
Oversight.
Yeah.
I get,
What if overtime is required?
I understand that part, but that's just like any other normal position.
Mhm.
What are we gonna say to them that's gonna control what they're doing at the museum?
So the curator does not control the museum. The curator acts as essentially like a
Employee.
To keep it
consultant.
open, yeah.
It's like
so
a
they don't have
consultant
volunteers.
for the museum board. That's really what the curator does, and they're not in control. They don't make all the decisions for the museum. They're just a consultant to help advise the board
feel like-
and carry out their actions.
The curator is a good, it's a good liability tool for the city to have someone over there. But the museum board does such a great job of running that museum on their own. But that curator also gives them that lifeline to the city. So, but it works really well that someone's there full time, making sure it happens. But they're amazing. They have such an amazing group of volunteers over there that keep it going. At the same time, no disrespect, gentlemen. They are an elderly group of volunteers and we lose them often. And it's unfortunate. So having someone there that just in case is always there, if something horrific were to happen to one of our volunteers, makes a lot of sense.
On the two different board issue, I think the original design was similar to kind of how the Arts Council runs now. So you have a city appointed board that runs the day-to-day operations of the Arts Council, but they have a funding mechanism that's a third-party 501c3. And I think that was the intention of the current ordinance. Not, you know, it's up to the board or the council to decide if that's the best way to go, but the design was the city has a board to run the day-to-day operations. There's a private foundation who owns the artifacts and is a funding mechanism for the operations.
And I guess what's the appetite to be in compliance with the ordinance, just to appoint the members of the foundation as the board?
Isn't that like kind of a conflict?
No, that's,
No.
I feel like that's.
I think in lieu of the
No, just-
board of an appointed board is what a curator. What the curator
So-
basically is.
Yeah.
And I would like to hear from Dean
Yeah,
and
me
any
too.
other
I
members who
want
have
to first hear
something
from the
to.
council. though.
So, well,
Well, we're speaking out.
and this can only be said without having heard from him. I'm never in favor of bureaucratic redundancy. I mean, anytime we get another layer, everything, you know, we found 1,000 projects that are slowed down the moment we bring them into another realm. And so when we are talking about public funding, though, I get that we have we are the stewards over this. So a recommendation of mine might be that we were to do stipulations for use. Maybe with this much money, these are the things that can be used for, and then it's left up to their.
Well, I mean, the city is probably, and I'm play spitballing here, there's probably $100,000 in public funds being expended on the museum. Between the building, the insurance, the
Utilities.
benefits for the person there. Including
It-
the person,
Curator.
yeah,
Yes.
for a curator. So there is $100,000 in public funds that I feel like if we don't have the ability to influence,
Well, that's what I'm saying, we have
there should be-
stipulations for use. So that's what I'm saying, it goes into their account with, these are the things it can be used for, but we won't tell you how much can be used for each thing, or they don't have to get approval from another board in order to do it, or have to still everyday efficiencies in
so.
order to go through some bureaucratic levels,
So
so.
then what I wonder is, should the city council liaison actually be a member of the board or foundation?
I feel like the curator was kind of in lieu of.
I don't think she had a
appointed
vote. She
Yeah,
wasn't,
no, I didn't, or neither did she, I don't think, but I
That's-
think that would be a good idea for a curator to be able to have a vote in the. Museum board, and that way the city still has the lifeline to there, but the museum still has the lifeline to the city. And there's some say on both sides that kind of in agreement with.
If I'm not mistaken, I think what you were getting at, Lisa, was it was like the city would pay, would make a contribution, but the foundation would hire their own person.
Yeah, well,
Or-
and I wasn't even referring to who we would hire. It's just a matter of the funding that's coming from the city, and that is public funds. I think that we're fine to say these are the things it can be used for. And then leave it up to their discretion as a board to say what they actually need it for. So if they, or even if they were to say, here's our budget, just as we have all of our departments do, they come to us and say, here's our budget, here's what we need to use it for. These are the things we need approved, and we could go through that and maybe even once a quarter or once or twice a year, go through it and say, what do you see as the needs coming up? Here's how much we can fund toward it. And then let the foundation members be the ones to say, here's what we need it for.
So are you saying for salary, utilities, building maintenance,
The whole thing.
all of that? Because it stipulates.
We would have to decide what we end up doing for a curator. I mean, we're already discussing whether or not we do that.
Well, no, that's my question though. Are you saying not stipulate in the ordinance what we will specifically fund, but rather say we will approve a budget and take these things out that are currently in there and say, okay,
Yes,
it now goes to a budget and
yes,
we approve the budget. Okay.
I'm not sure you can do that when there is city
Yeah.
property involved. I mean, this is city land. So there has to be some city control over that land. If we're gonna maintain that land with our maintenance services, the city is responsible for that. That wouldn't be
so
outsourced.
that wouldn't be something we'd give to the foundation. That would be part of what we would do. We
Yeah.
we could separate the duties and the outsourcing. We can separate what the city takes care of, and then we can say, let me just give a number. Here's $100. Here's how much the city can give to you to run the things, your day-to-days. I'm just kidding with 100, but and then they can break it down, and then they can approach us with a budget, and then they've discussed it as a foundation, and it's their priorities because they're there for the day-to-day. I know
What other-
nothing about.
and do we have
the
veto
day-to-day.
authority on that?
What other
Well, yes, and then
auxiliary,
it would come to us just like it does with our budgets from the other
what
departments.
other auxiliary board do we give the ability to set their own budget?
Yeah,
No, they're not setting their own budget.
You just said they would come to us and say, this is what we need.
No, I said we would come to them and say, this is how much money we have. What do you need to do with this? If we have $100 of public funds to give to you, you can prioritize it and then tell us where you'd like to spend it. Rather than having a separate board that they have to approve every single expenditure. I think it makes sense, in my mind, to remove a layer of bureaucracy and allow the people who are involved in the day-to-day, just like we allow our Steve and we allow Noah and we allow Cresta to say, here are what our needs are. And then they come to us, and say, here's what we'd like approved. And so I think that we can come up with whether it's them saying, here's what our suggested needs are, and we can say, well, we can or can't come up with that. But either way, we allow them through stipulations, these are what the funds can be used for. Then you tell us where you want that allotted.
See, that sounds like you just added a level of
Yeah,
bureaucracy.
I feel the same way.
No, we're talking about right now, from my understanding, they have to ask constant approval for everyday use. Is that true? Cresta, do you have to do approvals for anything?
Because the foundation has their own money.
Okay, so
The only thing
what
that
were
I
we
do
doing?
and work with is the curator.
Yep.
And pretty much it's only with for timekeeping, anything with HR, anything with like evaluations.
Okay,
Other than that, I do not have anything to do with the day-to-day. They take care of that and the money. We have very limited budget that they use from us. So they don't come and ask.
and have you been doing groundskeeping and things like that over
Mhm.
there? It's another city
They're,
building.
yeah, they're in charge of cleaning cleaning of the building, this goes through building maintenance, the parking lot and like the grounds. They take care of
And I don't think the foundation's gonna give you the ability to,
Control
they
their
don't have
funds,
to
yeah.
let you control their budget.
I feel like
No,
if we
we're-
just give the curator a vote, that keeps the city, because we employ the
Well,
curator.
Once again, I'm not saying that we're taking the foundation's money. I'm talking about the funds that we give to the museum, not foundation. money.
So
What is that
$500
amount?
a year.
But besides the position,
So we only give $500 a year to the museum. So that's, the big contributions are in kind with
yeah,
a staff support, building and maintenance.
and we
and
bought software for
utilities.
them.
And, and so this is not a matter of their budget. In fact, I think it runs better if they maintain their own budget.
Agree.
Just like the Arts Council runs their own budget completely separate of the city. What the city does is maintains a governing body that says these are the parameters of the city. And that's really a volunteer. In fact, all of the work really, if you take the Arts Council, which is very similar to this, how this should be structured, at least according to our bylaws. They operate almost completely independent. It's just a matter of the city has that say in that board to make sure there's a little diversity there so that it's not being run by one person.
And so then we need to be clear here, because in one breath, you're saying we give them $100,000 and we need to oversee that. And the next breath, you're saying it's only 500 except for our in kind. So there needs to be some clarity and consistency if we're going to say we need to hold them accountable for this, but there's nothing to hold them accountable for. We can let them control it, but we can't let them control it. So which is it? There needs to be an
I think that
understanding and
you're-
clarity.
Anything that's inside the building is controlled by them. But we do control the property. And so I think that does say, and I'm actually really intrigued by what was written. I wasn't here at the time that it was written, but I have seen this go through different iterations where everything fell apart because there wasn't somebody current in the situation. If it was the city's job to make sure there was at least somebody current on what's the responsibilities of the city, I think this would be more successful.
So are we talking falling fully on the curator as that?
No,
So
I
who would
think
that,
we-
as far as the city goes?
I think we put together a board, and our board is made up of members that they can all apply to be on this board. It's not excluding anyone, but you're also looking for different skill sets that maybe are not the priority. So,
Like what?
well, for example, I was shocked to see that originally the farmer's market came under the museum. Now, I've never seen that as a primary museum issue, but I looked at it and I thought, well, what if I found somebody who was passionate about farmer's market that has nothing to do with the museum? And they came in and said, well, fine, I'll be the member of the board that runs the farmer's market. And then the money that's made from that could support the museum, because the city doesn't need to make money off that. We just want the community element to happen. So to me, that would be us augmenting the success of what they do and giving them more opportunity to grow. I don't see it.
No.
Well, let us finish here. So I don't think that, I mean, I'm not trying to make them do things they don't want to, but like the Arts Council, they too said, well, we don't want to be, some people were like, I don't want to be involved in the orchestra, but other people came forward and said, I'd really like us to have an orchestra. So we have a different group that comes in, they're part of the board. They all agree on how they divide up to make sure that different things are happening in the city. And we have several different things that happen. We have several different organizations within that all function because you have different interests that take care of different responsibilities.
I will
They
say-
have somebody on their board that specifically works on grants and sponsorships. Again, we could find somebody who has a passion for that, who maybe isn't a part of this now and is just looking to bring in money to help support and grow. This is where I think the city can augment what's going on, and it's set up to be that way.
I will say that, and I do want to hear from them as well. But I don't think the farmer's market fits into the museum. I feel like,
Especially
Why not?
and I would
volunteers.
like to hear what they have to say about that, but I mean, I guess if they want to use that as a fundraising mechanism, that's fine. But I feel like, first of all, we're not doing a farmer's market.
I know, because it became a burden on city staff. But if we had volunteers who were passionate about it, maybe it would be successful and it wouldn't be a financial burden.
Sure.
I mean, we had staff that were out an entire, at least half day, if not full day, multiple people sometimes. That's just a total waste. So again, this is one of those things that it's how can you get more done in the city by having some people work together? And I think that's the way it was designed.
Do we have a 7-member board or?
We have an ordinance.
We have
got
an
ordinance,
ordinance.
but we don't have the board.
We're talking about, but they have their own board of
How
their
many,
own board.
how many
Yeah.
members are on the foundation right now?
Well, that's a question that I think has a real answer.
Yeah,
So-
we're waiting to.
I'd like to hear from them.
Me too.
Okay, so I'll invite Dean to the table to speak for them for now. And you can ask your questions. Dean?
Thank you. Mike's the vice president, I'm the president, but that title may change. Who cares? Okay, first of all, the members on that work as volunteers are all members of Syracuse City. We're not a separate country, not out to take care of, put Syracuse City under. We are all Syracuse citizens, with the exception of me. I'm from Clinton and happy to be from there. Okay, number two, if you look at the volunteer hours that our volunteers do, it's over 40 hours a week. So if you want to staff somebody else and hire someone else to do that, they wouldn't have the passion, they wouldn't know what they were doing. And so I'm very, very proud of the volunteers. Yes, to answer Jen's question, some of us are a little older than others. but-
We've lost a few this last year, is all
I
I'm
know.
saying.
But the ones that we have are still very, very active and want to have nothing but want the museum to grow. If I look at participation, and what we're really trying to do there is put Syracuse on the map, make it a destination. We have, when I left this afternoon, we had over 35 people come to the museum from 4 o'clock until quitting time, wanting to see the museum. We get people from all over the United States, Mexico, Canada, New Zealand, Europe, everywhere. And as they go through the museum, it's through this harvest host. We appreciate that. But they tell all their friends. And so, I mean, we've got people that says, I talked to so-and-so, they were with Harvest Host. And one of the neatest things they did on their trip, instead of going to a winery or some other place, they loved the Syracuse Museum. You look at the mural on the side of the museum, that didn't come from somebody, bureaucracy saying, let's put that on. That was addressed by volunteers. Let's do that. Also, you're talking about, I lost my train of thought there. That was a good one. But I don't care where the board comes from. They're all from Syracuse. I'm not a different country. They're all from Syracuse. That's all we ask, is they have a passion to grow, stimulate, and get people involved in the museum. And if I look at the number of people that have come this last year, it's triple from the year before. That's triple from the year before that. And yes, we appreciate having a curator and we appreciate the city paying for it. But I think if you look at other things that go on under things anybody does in the city, I don't think there's anybody that offers more to the city and the good name of the city than the Syracuse Museum. You know, I love little kids. I love to see them over to the splash pad. But I don't think those kids get any more excited about Syracuse than people that come to the museum. All we're really asking for is the monies that are spent for the curator, the HR, everything. Presta does a wonderful job there. But we don't want the bureaucracy, and maybe I'm understanding it wrong, when we need to change the paint to put up a new display, or I need to get a new display, or I want to bring this product in, or we need to do that. Who knows better than the people that are working in the museum?
None of that would be a requirement of a board, and boards never work that way. The day-to-day operations are completely at the freedom of the people who work there.
Yeah,
Okay, well, that was my misunderstanding, and Mayor helped clarify this, because
What the
when I
board-
left last time, it was anything on a day-to-day operation would have to go through Parks and Recreation.
Well, it says the city board would manage the day-to-day operations of the museum.
They would say, just like all of our other boards, they set out a plan. They set out a plan, they approve it together. Okay, every other board that we have sets out a plan. Most of them are annual. And then they go ahead and just execute that plan. And they have periodic meetings to make sure that they're still in agreement with any changes they make to that plan. Much like we do, except for a lot less frequent. And again, it's just a kind of group that makes sure that you're following the plan and that there is some involvement, you know, that is decided. So look, council, do you have any specific questions for Dean?
no, I guess, but if I can make a recommendation,
What's your recommendation?
I think this does need some revision. I do think that what I would like to see happen is basically kind of like we do with the Disaster Preparedness Committee, for example. Those people are already existing in an area. We assign them, even though they already have the assignment from the foundation. So I recommend appointing the foundation as members of the Syracuse Council and kind of make them one and the same, so we can be in compliance with the ordinance. But what this allows us to offer now is when there is an opening on the foundation, instead of them going to all of their friends and trying to recruit, which they can also do, we would also have the ability to say, look, who is passionate about the history of the city, and it allows us to be able to add members on there
The one
to
thing,
the
the one thing that I think is
committee.
important.
whether you add that to your foundation, that's up to you
Okay,
guys.
the one thing that I think is important, and it's something that we do with every other board in the city, is we open it up to public announcement and we allow anyone to apply.
And that's what I'm going at.
And I think that that is a step that has to be put in place. It's always supposedly been in place, but you have to, if you want support from a community, you have to say anybody can apply.
Are you guys like,
Let me just make.
Tell me what you think
We
about
had
that.
a volunteer night about 2 months ago, because our biggest problem is getting volunteers,
Mhm.
good volunteers that'll stay and work with us. It's all, yeah, I want to do that, but most of them don't work. So we had a volunteer night and we had punch and cookies, and we had probably 30 or 40 people come from the city that wanted to maybe be volunteers. Now, we've had 3 people since then that seem to be good. And I don't care if the mayor approves them or the city council approves them. We
As long
just
as they
want
do the
It-
job.
it-
right?
as long as they show up at work?
It would be
Yeah.
good, and there's some leverage there when you do have recommended by the mayor and approved by council, because you can stop and say, do you understand what you're getting yourself into? Which is, you know, you would be expected to come on a regular basis. This is how they meet, this is how they operate. And are you okay with that? And you know what, I mean, it does prevent people from showing up once, saying, I want to be in charge, and then never showing up again.
Can I just throw this out there?
Sure.
So right now, the museum foundation is not contemplated in our current ordinance. So if you want the museum foundation included, you could do that through an agreement if you're looking to replace them as a board or not. We can do that through an agreement that spells out what the different obligations are of the city versus the foundation. They also have their own bylaws and articles of incorporation that are very separate and distinct from anything that we can control.
Yep.
And so we just have to decide if, because they don't exist, not in the real world, but they don't exist in our ordinance. It's just kind of the situation that has
We would just
evolved.
describe the relationship.
Yeah, I feel like we should probably swap this out with an agreement.
Dean, do you want a curator? Has that been beneficial, or can you see a better way to
No,
use it?
Absolutely. Now, going back to.
Even if it comes with some oversight.
Yeah, even it depends the mayor a little bit on this. We need a curator. Yes, we have done things a little bit wrong there, but the board has kind of helped encourage the curator on the way we want to go. And rather that help comes from a board from the city, that's fine. All I care about, all the board cares about, all the volunteers care about is at the end of the day, people keep coming to the museum. They love the Syracuse Museum and it's a bright star in Syracuse. That's all any of us really care about. And I couldn't care less if I was president. Hope I'm not anymore, but you know, we just.
Well, I want you to know that we met with Dean previous, and I told him there was in no way that I wanted any of this to boot him out from what he does, because we love that, and we want to encourage it to continue.
Are we overthinking this? What if we've already got an ordinance that says it's a 7-member city appointed museum and cultural center board? Why don't we just appoint the members and
With our input, I got no problem. If there's.
but I would
five that you come-
anticipate some of the foundation members being on that board.
I would anticipate some of them as well. I would like to augment it with a couple of the assignments if we decide to include some of that. For example, there is somebody in the city who's got a real passion for farmers markets and is hitting me up all the time. If he wanted to take care of it and wanted to be a board member and that was his function, I think it's a way to get that back in the city.
We're talking about Chad.
Yes,
Yeah, you should let him run with it.
I know.
But
Man.
the board, the appointed board does not prohibit the foundation from having other
No.
volunteers.
That's right.
You can have all sorts of other
We
volunteers.
That's
have,
right.
we have 19 volunteers right now.
Yeah.
And so.
All this does, right now you have 4 voting members. This suggests that you should have 7. And that the 7, and your board could be separate from this board.
Could we combine
if you
them?
want it,
Like have
We
those,
would sooner have one.
If you
and then
want,
point 3.
but they could also be a part of. And that's the thing. I would just like to put it out there, give it a try by asking who wants to be a part of it. My guess is 90% of the applications are going to come from the current foundation group anyway. And I would just like to give it a chance. I don't see this in conflict. I really don't.
So can we put in there, like having the four of them being from the foundation itself and us appointing the other 3?
That's what
You
they were
could,
recommending.
but
Yeah.
here's where I have, the only reason I would say. If,
We're still asking from.
okay,
volunteers
the
from
only reason that
community.
I'm concerned about that is this. I have no problem appointing them with the same process that we appoint everybody else. What I have a problem with is the assumption that if that changes somewhere, if they were to change their members, that it's automatic, because it still has to go through the same process. Same thing with Arts Council, same things with disaster prep. We still have to
Well, that's
officially
right.
recognize them.
I don't know what.
Yeah,
It seems like we're making a big deal out of,
yeah, we would just.
like,
I agree.
we would want the foundation members on the board. I don't think. I think we go, I don't know. It seems to me like we've got a process in place. Let's try the process.
I agree.
I don't know.
And before you end, I just want to throw out there, it creates a lot of like problem for HR to have dual managing boards. So if we were to still staff them and provide a curator. We just want to be very clear about who has discretion over that position and management, because.
Can
that
I address
creates
that?
somewhat of
And
a-
I'm okay with everything so far, but I need to address this. If we hire a new curator, obviously Cresta is the one that gets their time card and makes sure they show up to work and all this stuff. If I tell her they didn't come, she knows them. But on the day-to-day basis, we get together and we've got these bright ideas. Do we have to go through Cresta or can we?
She wants you to.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No,
No,
I don't think she wants you to.
So
No,
there's a kind of a conflict because I as the president now, and I could care less if I wasn't or wasn't. Are we okay with Cresta talking to her and the president talking?
Yeah, I just, when we've got two supervisory roles, like, I just want to make sure that at the end of the day, it's the city's employer that's supervising our employee and not the
And
foundation.
We've never
because-
tried that, but on a day-to-day basis, and it's an understatement, painting the wall, Cresta doesn't want to hear about that.
And to me, that's more of a facility issue,
Yeah.
not an employee.
Well, not
issue.
a facility, but I mean, there's stuff like last Saturday, we had 40 people that changed back and forth. We had to move on stuff really, really, really fast. I hope, well, she was as praised, so was the rest of us, but we had to move on things fast. So as we've got a curator, Miss Curator, Mr. Curator, this is, as we as the board, we as the president see it, this is the way we've got to go. And if we've messed up,
So, yeah, again, no, just like if they were a consultant, like, they don't have to, you don't have to go to the consultant's boss to.
They would
tell
have
them
the
what
freedom to
do.
work
Yeah.
within their position.
Their
Yes.
purview of their position is
Is
to
to do their
curate the
job.
museum.
but if they had to go spend $5,000 on something,
Then they would have.
then they would have to, they would know who has to approve
they
that.
don't spend any money without approval from.
Sure,
Yes.
Then it's really not an issue.
not an issue.
So that, and that was my thing, and maybe I misunderstood and I apologize, but the day-to-day,
That person should have the freedom
need
to
to
do
do
their
this.
job.
Yeah.
Which is gonna be to support, and that means they're gonna work with you. I think part of their job description is going to be to encourage more interaction and stimulate more of the process and ideas that come from this foundation group and the board.
Yeah, and it just needs to be made clear that the curator does not report to the board.
That's
Right.
right.
If there is a conflict between the board
they
and,
take direction from it.
They work with the board.
Yeah,
work
they
with-
Go
cooperate, but
Okay,
They
and
do
I'm
not
fine with that. 'cause
You know,
We're not
you don't control the
We're
curator.
not
They work with you.
dictatorial, but if we come into, she thinks this and we think that, then I guess.
then that would be elevated.
Then we
Yeah.
elevate it, yeah, if there's a problem.
Or it could be elevated to the city board.
It could be, and then that board
It
could
depends
say,
on the nature of the issue.
Sure.
right. So I don't know about you,
Chris
but I,
had her hand up, sorry, was that?
Mayor, can I say
yes, please.
I just wanted to say, I know that Lisa brought up that the curator have a vote, and I would just say, recommend that is not the case. Because when they're kind of their bosses or the boss, you wanna, like I am the arts council liaison, I listen, I help. I went between work between the city and the board, but giving them a vote would not be good.
Okay,
It was actually Jen suggested.
That was my suggestion.
so let me ask a
You
different
tell me.
question.
That's my-
idea.
So let me ask a different question. On the Arts Council, where we are, again, we are providing some facilities and we are also providing some monies. Does the city, do we have a voting representative on that board?
We did in the past, now we don't.
No, we never did.
Always active.
We never did. We used to, when I started there, they started asking me, what do you think? I said, it's your board. And they kept saying that until we tried to put it in the bylaws, and then it was an issue.
If there is a tie, I as a co-chair have a vote. That's the only time. If there's a tie, I break the vote.
Okay,
So something like that.
Sounds like a lot.
But that's why there's 7 people, right?
Yes,
Has that ever happened?
I have
No.
never had to do that.
never has
They are
happened.
very,
I would be comfortable with seeing something that contemplates the two boards, like. however that's gonna work, but I would also like to see it spelled out better and delineates who has ownership of the day-to-day operations, because that's still not clear to me. Here it's saying that the council would, and then we're talking out of both sides, and so they can't coincide.
Here's what I think. If we have a full-time employee and we're invested in that in the board, then that person is probably the most reliable consistency in that group. So that person should have some organizational responsibility. I don't think they have like a management say, but an organizational responsibility to make sure that it's happening. If that means that other board members say, hey, we're gonna take care of this for you, and that person can just say, oh, I'm accountable that it's being done, and it is.
Yeah,
Or if nobody's doing it, I have to be accountable for this, and so I'm gonna make sure it gets done. Again, I'm not saying that we dictate that about that person, but they do have an accountability to the city.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If we're gonna have 7 members, I would support something that said that a certain percentage of it comes from the volunteers, the current volunteers. I think that gives them more say so that we don't end up swiping out all the people who are actually physically involved. And we start putting people in charge that aren't necessarily vested in this. So I would support something that gave a percentage of how many
Yeah.
members are.
Why don't we see if the 90% of them already don't come from there?
Which
Because
would be
my
great.
expectation is that's where all the applications.
Can't see after you get the applications, saying
Yeah,
you've got
I
so
think
many
it needs to be
I would-
identified.
I would like to say at a minimum, the chair of the foundation has a seat on that committee.
I would,
At a minimum.
But I'd say,
7-person committee, I would say the 4.
I'd say
Yeah.
4 needs
Okay.
to be
It should
from
be the
actual
4.
volunteers.
here's my only
Yeah.
concern with that. I don't have an issue with that.
But the majority,
Okay, I don't have an issue with that until you say that somebody comes in and says, well, we have 4 members, so we will always dictate to the others. I would prefer that it's not a split, that they all concur. That would be the easiest way to go.
but that's,
But if you guarantee that one person always has a majority faction, then you've dissolved the trust.
Let's do 6.
Six members
3
and
and
go
3.
3 and 3, and then Cresta breaks the tie every time.
if there's a
Yeah.
lot of tie, perfect.
There you go, 50%
I think that's
should come from
perfect.
volunteers and 50%
50% from the city.
We just created the Senate.
But they're all city.
Okay, we're not rewriting the ordinance tonight. I would
That's a
encourage you to say
7-person
that
board.
we can use the structure that's there and we could resolve it without having to do a rewrite, but.
I would say,
No,
I would
I-
say the 4 seats should come from.
No,
the
it needs
4
to be.
seats.
I think
The boards.
I think that
Yeah.
there needs to be some
You want to do a rewrite?
acknowledgement
It's gonna have
of
to.
the foundation board, and I do think that the owners of the artifacts should have some say in the museum operation.
I feel like getting the 4 seats.
I
should
agree with that, but I
automatically
also
go.
agree with, I don't think they get an automatic.
Majority.
That's why if we did 6 and Crest is considered the 7th.
How about you?
How
That
free
can't
are
be
special
everything,
play
just
time?
have-
Liaison,
Doesn't like that.
be
How the
the,
council can decide.
so Jen would be the deciding vote if it comes.
What
down
now?
to
If there's a
vote.
tie.
All those times you told me I couldn't have one.
No, you don't get a vote unless there's a tie.
Why don't you keep it 7, give the foundation 3, that gives them plenty of influence to try and influence that 4th vote.
So.
Why in the world would we take
Yeah.
the volunteers and diminish their?
Exactly,
I-
thank you.
Because it's
When
not
the
about
people who
power.
are day to day, well, you just said if they have 4.
We could appoint,
Yeah,
appoint 4 of them, we
You
could
just
appoint,
said that. don't
we
want
could
them to have
appoint-
power.
we could appoint 5 of them. We're just saying, don't write it in that you have to give them 4, you could appoint 5 of them. You could appoint 4 of them.
There has to be a minimum of people who are allowed, because we could come in under this,
They've only got
if
4
this is
board members.
decided, and we can say, here are 7 new board members. You're not one of them, you're not one of them, you're not one of them,
Why would
You're
we
here.
ever do that?
right? So
Because
let's make sure it
people
doesn't
can't.
happen.
Well, so this is the
It
problem.
doesn't happen.
I think we're always working on this worst case scenario. We never give it a chance to have a best case scenario.
I say.
I mean,
we-
honestly.
there
Talking
needs to
about
be a
if they
minimum.
had a 4-person vote, that what could happen, that was worst case scenario. So best
was
case
brought up.
scenarios, they're gonna
All right.
continue to run it as great as they do, and I feel like
And
their
so-
4
and all the-
seats should
all
roll
the
over
board
to the
members don't
7.
Agree on everything, but
Okay,
it's
so
not the case. The people in day to day should always have the greatest influence.
I'm gonna end
I
this
would say the
because I don't
4
feel
to
like we're
7
gonna
should come
resolve
from
this
there.
tonight, so. expressed some interest in doing a revision, so there'll be a future work session before we go on with anything here.
I thought
We're
it was
gonna
like the
move
three
on.
of us kind of talked about the four seats coming.
We're gonna move on.
Well, we were,
So
isn't this what we're
the
talking about? There's a
Preston,
consensus.
we have an update on the pump track
Yeah,
project.
if it's on his way, it's gotta be another way.
Can I, one last thing?
No, we're done with this item for tonight. Talk to me separately.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of the volunteers.
And yeah,
Sure
thank you. for all your
appreciate you
Yeah.
so much.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That gave me anxiety, I just want you all to know.
What we do.
Before I start.
You're not the only
You're
You're not alone.
Russell will represent all 7 members.
Oh, I don't want to do it, people, I don't want to
No,
sign.
Do your job.
I know, I'm just saying, it just gives me anxiety. Okay, now I have more anxiety because I gotta ask for money, yay.
Yeah, what's going on here?
So, I know, with the pump track. Way that it was designed when we first went out, so right now, as you saw there. We have the $250,000 you guys have already budgeted, we can have the pump track, we can do the additional lighting, and we can do the landscaping.
Just the wrong way.
Just,
Well, no.
just in a way that.
Okay,
couples-
we can have that,
Inadequate.
we can
Okay.
have that, and we can not have anything else,
We
however.
do it again later.
However. We've contacted West Valley City, and we've been trying to do this all along. The people that were purchasing the pump track for said, oh, it's no problem. You can put it on grass, you can put it on dirt, you can put it on whatever, except for you don't want to put it on loose rock or mulch because things get onto the track. So we're like, great, we'll just excavate, we'll put it there, we'll do some landscaping around it. And then I finally got a hold of West Valley because they're actually moving their pump track that looks exactly like ours to a different park. And so I wanted to know, like, why are you doing that? They said it's been really good. However, they did listen and they put it on the dirt and it sinks a lot. So they're constantly having to, dig it up, move it up, fill it in. They put mulch around it. It ended up getting onto the track. Rock ended up getting on the track, scraping
Especially if
it.
it's sinking.
Yeah, scraping it. And so those pieces are like $2,000 to replace. So they said they love the track, the people love the track, but if they had to do anything again, they would put it on, and which they are doing now, putting it on asphalt or concrete. So we went back and looked, and the asphalt was the cheaper route to go, which was the $85,000. And then when we got that and looked at how it was designed, it's like asphalt, black asphalt. There's no shade because you don't want to put trees out in the asphalt.
Basically a parking lot.
Yeah, it's like a parking lot. So that's when we looked at it and said, it'd be a really good time to actually put a pavilion there. So there is shade. People are gonna want to rent that. They're gonna want to have birthday parties and stuff there. The landscaping that we would do would be kind of away from it, big boulders that they could set on with trees so they could have shade. And then we
Not
would
the
do.
boulders they could fall
Well, it'd be far enough away, I think, I hope. That's how we designed it, right? That's how Brian designed it. It was a bit far enough away, as you can see, that they wouldn't. The little ones for like little kids, although they told us at West Valley, big kids use it too. Everybody uses it, but it'd be far enough back that there shouldn't be a problem. So boulders, and then we put wildflowers. So very minimal maintenance that would take place there. And then you can see the overall picture that was sent to you too, of just how it would look. So to do all of that would be an additional let's just round up, $63,000 to do that. So
Can you just put down pavement at the touch points? Is that easier, harder, less expensive?
we talked about that.
I guess why do you rule that out?
I think the decision point was you can actually rearrange the track if
Yeah.
you have,
You have a full
if you have a
foundation.
full, yeah.
What does the
Pad.
what does the
Otherwise you're pouring
vendor
little
say
micro pads everywhere.
about our concerns that we were told it could be placed on anything? We've talked to another one of their customers. Do they have any recommendations as far
Change
as?
their market.
Well, they're the
skills.
same thing. They said it can be put anywhere. Of course, concrete and asphalt,
What is
it just
better?
increases.
Anything
But it
can be
can,
put anywhere. doesn't
it
mean
can be
should.
put on it. You don't want to put it on,
Good, better, best.
but yeah.
Yeah.
So you could put it on any
So it's just
surface.
a matter of we better do what's going to have the long-term survival. right?
So we didn't ask,
Okay, so
we
the
didn't ask the
asphalt-
proper question up front.
Is it is it just flat or are they doing like
It's,
hill is
The
not.
pump track is the up and down.
Okay, so I understand that, but underneath of it, if you can move it around, like you said, is it the asphalt going to be underneath like the same way the pump track is, or is it just level?
It's level,
Okay.
the asphalt's level, the pump track is portable, so you can add on to it, take off,
Modular.
it's modular,
Okay.
and it is little.
How's it sinking in their dirt?
When it rains or when it gets really, they say it just, and kids are going over it, it just kind of.
it's a vibration.
Go vibration
Vibration.
and stuff like that.
It's new dirt.
Yeah, and we,
Yes,
like
we
when
did
they
ask that
just-
question, they just
Yeah.
said, no, it's not been a big issue with the people we have, and I'll be honest with you, most people are putting in the asphalt tracks where almost all of it's asphalt, they have a little dirt in between, but then you're maintaining all the dirt in
In
between.
between, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, if we did do touch points, you're right, we would have this debris in the middle
Yeah.
of each.
And that's what West Valley is doing now, because it is such a hit down there, so they're gonna have offsite, to keep the module, but they're putting in the asphalt track with the little, but he's like nervous about all the different maintenance, which when we researched that, we're like, we don't have the time to go and make sure that all of that is safe. So
So,
that's why we're doing the modular.
so how does the asphalt hold up with this track on it? And what's our maintenance requirement of the asphalt?
I think it's like with anything with the parking lot, we'll have to, do
Has to
this.
be redone.
So does that track have to be taken off and then?
You can, because it's modular. You can take it, you can rearrange how it goes.
You just have to move all the dirt.
Yeah.
On top. Just like your Hot Wheels track.
So
But
what's
no
the price
speed
difference
zone.
between that and concrete?
Well, what I'm thinking is if we're having to do that and move the
Actually,
track completely and resurface, what's there? I guess it's
That
less
could be
free, I guess
years,
it's
yeah.
less frequent than having to keep readjusting it every time it rains.
Yeah, no, you're gonna go and have to be actually maintaining in those all the time,
Yeah.
because the kids are there's gonna be different things that they're gonna do on it, so.
See,
They're gonna beat the heck out of it.
I'm of the
Yeah.
opinion you just do the touch points, because I don't anticipate us. This week, we're gonna put it in the Z configuration.
No, we
I don't
probably
think
won't.
we
but
move it,
But you're still gonna, once you do that, then you're still gonna have to pay to bring in,
and then you have.
Irrigation,
maintenance
you
in
don't wanna
between.
put mulch
Oh,
or rock
yeah.
by it.
Oh, yeah,
because that's what West Valley did. And that's what we went off when we went and visit, because we went and did this, when we were doing this 2 years ago, we went to West Valley and they loved it, but they hadn't been using it. It would just barely finish.
My concern is that as soon as you just pave this whole area, this is gonna be hot.
Yes, and that's why we
Experience
wanted the
comes
shade
knowledge.
structure.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But anything you put out there is gonna die because it's gonna be hot. And that's why we wanted stuff on the side so that people could go off. And we'll have a drinking fountain over there. And
yeah,
then
that
a shade
drinking,
structure.
so the drinking fountain is gonna be clear with the back restrooms, right?
No.
You're gonna put
yeah.
another one over there?
We had talked to Brian about running a thing there. with a drinking
Second one.
fountain. Yeah, second. one.
Is that, I didn't see that in the proposal.
Yeah, I don't know where. It's at, it was part of it.
I think it was by the pavilion.
Yeah, or close to it, like right there.
For the
Sure.
what?
To add water in next to the track.
Oh,
Yeah.
Because as soon as they're all riding essentially in the middle of a parking lot for an hour.
well, that's just I don't know, I don't really know what the pump track
Good
is.
idea or a bad idea to put water near the track?
Well, it's not gonna be enough water that they're gonna do anything to it.
I mean, I
It's
think
just
about
gonna
a
be-
few pavilions we have in the city where there's water near it and kids just use the water to make a mess.
Well, I think that's usually when they have sand to dump in the drinking fountain. There won't be sand. Well,
What
there
about-
there will be.
What about the skate park? I know we used to have a drinking fountain by the skate
We
park.
took it
They
out.
destroyed it.
Yeah, so I guess my concern is if you put one next to the
They
pump
have
track.
not destroyed it with the new bathroom, the new restroom, so. They haven't done it with that one yet. So they could just have the drinking fountain that they could, I know. They could just ride down and drink out of the restroom drinking fountain too, so.
So we can get some of this money from the park impact fee, right? Was what?
All
were
of
the
it is
two-
brand new, so you could get
It
all
should
of
be
it.
all.
Okay.
Okay, and how are we on that? What's our,
What,
Well, at the moment, we're okay, but we're
Yeah.
about to talk about putting something in for the
Yeah, right now, there's.
park phase that's gonna eat up a lot of it.
okay,
Yeah, we're. Outside of mine.
so we could do this correctly and not regret a day
Yes, we
later
could.
that we did this wrong.
Well, but you could regret that you didn't have the money that you spent on this for the regional park,
But
phase
this-
one.
isn't like gonna cripple that project.
True.
You're,
Yeah. that's
but
like a-
yes, yes to both,
And you could not do the pavilion. You don't have to do the pavilion.
or we could do it at a later date.
Yeah.
But how much is the pavilion again? I forget.
80.
Maybe.
Because we've had so many different pavilion costs.
Yeah. And we could just do the dirt. You guys could just, we could just excavate it and do the dirt and see how it goes.
Well,
My thinking is at least you do the right underneath the track, otherwise you'll regret that.
and see, I think you just do the touch points, but the point is, yeah, let's see, what do you put around it now?
Now it's just dirt.
And now it's just dirt, because you
Yeah.
can't put mulch.
It's
You
not
can't
dirt,
put.
It's weeds.
Weeds.
Understand.
Yeah.
It's go aheads.
Yeah.
Start.
Go ahead.
BMX.
That's exactly right.
That's right.
Thinking about the tires now.
Bring the
Thanks.
whole
How
experience.
many tires could we buy for 80,000?
You know, we could put up a tube vending station right here.
That's just.
The-
more
Get,
money
get, get the
because-
puncture proof tubes and you can sell them for like 50. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is
I would support doing the underneath, at least the asphalt, right from the beginning. I would like to do the pavilion, but we could always do that later, but that's where I am.
others.
And then what about lighting?
So the lighting, it's already under, it's just because it
Already
came back and it gets more.
So we got
Yeah,
that.
so we have, it's already, you have to do it. Which is in that $250,000. I would just like,
So the hold off on the pavilion would just be, we can do it later if we decided to, but
You'd save 80K
For now. It's so
For
hot,
now.
they're
Well,
already.
and you'll spend 100K next year to put it in.
well,
A
and
little more, you
the
actually have to
issue
dig up
would
some
be
stuff.
also that then you're going to have, because right now you do it. And you
build
do
it
it,
in and it
otherwise
saves
you're
some
gonna
of
come
the-
back and have to cut out.
Yeah, you're gonna cut.
That's
and
gonna
it's
be
gonna
more
be-
Yeah.
And it's gonna be more no matter what next year.
Well, that's
Just-
like with the
What you'll
lights.
probably get is the emails from parents that took their kids down there
And
and
say,
had
"What
had to
in the world
watch
were you
and
thinking?"
get cooked.
Yeah.
And then,
Oh, you mean like the horse
$80,000.
people do every Tuesday?
Yeah.
Shocking.
exactly.
Yep.
Pavilion over by that.
what do you think about the pavilion?
Okay,
I'd love to
So-
do it.
this has to go on in a future agenda because it's money. So we'll bring it back.
We just kind of need the nod that you guys, that's the direction you want to go so we can move forward.
Or we can do the,
Weeks up and vote.
Yeah, you have to vote.
we can do the budget adjustment later if they're okay with it.
Yeah.
All right, so who's in?
I'm in.
Who's out?
I mean, I'm probably in, but we're gonna have,
Well,
we've got a trade-off somewhere.
I understand, yeah. So who's out?
I think I'm out. I just,
Okay, Jen,
it's constant.
What a headache,
So
right?
Jordan's accountable for goat heads.
Jen,
Say I'm out.
so
I didn't
much-
say,
You just said you're out.
oh, I said I'm not out.
Neglecting. the
Oh,
horse.
you're not.
Oh, I thought you said that.
Oh,
I said I'm not out.
So does that mean you're in?
okay,
I'm, at this point, I'm still thinking.
Well, you got three. so
Okay.
you're good.
no, we don't yet.
Well, I
You're a
just-
maybe and you're a maybe.
She said
I
yes.
just said,
Oh,
I
you
meant,
said, okay,
stop
then,
neglecting the horse.
all right, so we're going to go
I actually agree with
forward.
that. I was
There's
actually,
no overspending money on this
Budget
without updating the
adjustment.
horse.
I was actually wondering if we should
But
move that.
with that, we gave them the option to have
We're
the whole
gonna
new
go
arena.
forward based on.
Hold on,
three in
Jordan's
favor.
got another point.
And
No,
The very beginning.
You don't have another point?
I was just wondering if we could move the Bowery closer to the arena,
okay, so we're
but
gonna,
that,
we're gonna go forward with the spending and do the adjustments in the
Logistics can
future,
be-
yeah. All right, so let's,
But you do remember it was voted down,
with
so
the
they wouldn't have done
pavilion?
it anyway, right?
with the pavilion,
Oh, they were
I have
voting on
three
it.
for the pavilion, so that's, that's.
But
a
it was
yes.
voted down, the location.
All
we
right,
went
we're
to.
gonna move to the planning items. The first one is an application for zoning amendments for 10.613 acres. Noah, could you present this a little bit?
You never got
Yes,
it.
sir. Current zoning is R1, which is a 12,000 square foot lot. The proposed zoning is R3, which is 8,000 square foot lot. We have the representative, the applicant here. There's any questions?
Can you show us the zoning map?
right here.
It's in the packet, page.
Well, I looked at it, but what is the, so what's this light yellow? Is this R1 or is this R3?
Yeah, I can walk you through. So I'm on page 24 of the packet. It's that's the light yellow is R1. So that's the 12,000 square foot lot. But if you notice, some of those lots up in Fremont, those are smaller than 12,000 feet. And the reason why is there used to be a cluster overlay on top of the R1, but since we've removed the cluster from overlay and made it its own zone, but in the process, it's kind of a long story, but at the time they just did away with all cluster.
So it's an R3 product in a.
Yeah,
R1 zone.
so the context of what they're proposing is not totally out of the ordinary of what you see in the surrounding area.
So what confused me is then on the application, he says, I want R3, but I'm gonna make R2 lots.
So he's included a draft, a draft design.
Sure.
And if you look at the lot sizes that he's proposing, they're 8,000 square feet. But the lot width of 80,000. So most of those lots are actually 11,000, 16,000, 10,000. In fact, there's only 4 that are six, thank you, 6 that are 8. So most of them, I think, is what he means is that the lot sizes are bigger than the R3 minimum.
On average,
On average, yeah, but it's a single family product.
That could change.
It does, I can see the feeling that I'm interpreting, it's an island of R3. There's not any R3. The closest R3 is the other one, just that is off of 2700 South. That was last year. The Ovation Homes one. They haven't been able to get off the ground yet, but
Never got enough dirt.
Yeah. Got dirt piled up for days over there.
yeah, so they're doing some just general initial things, but they certainly don't have anything in the ground yet as far as roads, things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, this I've included this draft plan, but it's not necessarily binding at this point with the zoning, so they would still go through a subdivision process if they were successful in getting their zoning. But I think that's probably pretty close to what you'll get though, as far as lot counts.
Oh, no. I'm okay with not rezoning this to an R3.
Me too.
R1 is perfectly suitable for that spot.
I could maybe go to R2,
Maybe.
but R3 is a big leap.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's
Only 2 of us.
Oh,
you said.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I got 3, so we're good. So the next one, Noah, bring up the application for redevelopment
Doesn't matter.
consultation with the city council.
Can't speak. Okay. Let's see, pre-application consultation. We also have the applicant here in the audience. I've included a concept plan that he has provided. This is off of 2000 West near the interchange. What is being proposed is townhomes. The plan provided has not really been reviewed in depth by staff. Like the ordinance says, the intent of this is to get a feel for council on the use. And, some just very non-binding, broad feedback, before he goes and spends a lot of money engineering and stuff.
Okay, so this is an application for consultation, so I'll bring the applicant forward. What questions do you have for council?
So I guess in general, we're looking for a mixed use zone in here. It's currently zoned commercial. In this area is the general plan for it. Kind of the odd shape nature of the piece, and some of that we feel like we could preserve the commercial aspect of the property. And the zoning, keeping it in the front, but also providing maybe a little bit denser residential product. which you feel could be,
Are you aware that this does not meet the ordinance for mixed use that we have?
I am, yep, Noah and I talked about that, so we would be asking for somewhat of an exception to that.
Council, how do you feel about an exception?
Well, it would depend on where we're missing, what's falling short here.
Well,
It's
it's
not
not
a
on a
state road.
major road. Which we've always insisted on,
So, this specific spot right here, where's that coffee shop supposed to go?
right here, it didn't go in.
It
The
didn't,
church-
this
it's,
is the spot,
Remember the church came in rezoned?
That's what I was
so
gonna
The
the,
church
this,
can't afford to do it, so
the
they're
coffee
telling.
shop's not going?
No,
the whole church.
Okay, let me nurse my broken heart for a second. I'll get back to you. I'm sorry, that's. This area, the more I drive through these homes over here, the more, and this is one of the main reasons why I'm against the last thing we talked about. I'm a farmer and I like corrals, and whether you like to agree to it or not, these are basically human corrals, and people are happy with having the smaller yards over there. We have areas of people who want the bigger yards and the moderate to larger size house, and they love their yards. And there are people who like the moderate to larger size house, but don't want to deal with yard. And then there are people who just like the smaller houses with no yards. And this area of housing development kind of accommodates the second two. And I don't know about the whole mixed use situation of it, but that was where the coffee shop was supposed to go. And where business was, like what you just said, salvage some of the business aspect of that was there. But the small or the more high density area, if we can keep it in certain sections of the city, like where it's at, this is where I would say it would probably need to go. With what you suggested.
3/4 of an acre is probably not
So,
gonna be anything but a gas station.
so this is general commercial.
Yeah,
Wanting a mixed use, change to mixed use, it doesn't meet.
Doesn't meet our mixed.
doesn't meet
Yeah,
our
it
mixed
doesn't.
use ordinance.
And
I like the idea.
And I guess we had one come up last month. Sorry,
Yeah,
you finished?
right across
You wanna
the
finish your
street, right?
statement?
No, that's all I was saying, so,
Okay.
yeah.
So I guess my thing is,
They don't care if I'm ever finished, like right across the street, what you're talking about, right? The mixed use. Yeah, last month.
yes.
Amazing.
So they were at an acre and they said there was no way for them to be profitable with that, just because they have to have so much buffer space. And this is only, it's 3.5. And I guess it would be tough to, I mean, if you can make it profitable, great. But there's enough stuff here that I don't see a compelling reason to make an exception to an existing ordinance for a shop, for a little 3/4.
Did we turn it
Commercial
commercial
path.
though? We made it,
It was already commercial. They were trying to rezone mixed
Mixed
use.
use, it was
No.
the same.
yeah, but did we make it commercial for the,
No,
we didn't, it was already
it
that.
was already.
Yeah, it's already commercial, just like, yeah, this one is commercial.
Yeah,
And they're trying to convert to a mixed use because apparently apartments and townhomes are more profitable than commercial is
well,
for the builder.
I don't know in this spot, what are you gonna put there?
That's kind of
Like,
where I'm
commercial
going.
wise, what are you gonna put there? Like, it's like a townhome specific kind of spot though. Besides a coffee shop. I'm so brokenhearted about that. Someone call them and tell them that saddens my heart.
Is this right next to the freeway off ramp?
So
Yeah.
excited about
It
having to
was-
drive down.
Yep,
there.
and it's
Yeah.
right by the roundabout there.
Yeah, I
That's right.
feel like this has a lot more potential for something other than
That apartment.
apartments or townhomes.
I do think
I
it's a really viable place for.
It's right there. The freeway off ramp is,
Look at all
Those
that-
neighbors are not gonna
Look
be
at all
happy.
that housing you can serve.
yeah, but see, like
They're
both
up
of
there for a reason.
the freeway off ramp is one lot away.
Yeah, it's one lot between.
Like
them,
this
so-
is, you're gonna get off the freeway and it's gonna be right here.
Is way out there because they want to be next to commercial.
Is that?
Well, I
that
definitely want to be
whole
next to the
area
freeway.
is commercial.
They knew it was
Right.
coming when they bought the houses.
We already.
We
it's already-
create a buffer with houses,
Absolutely.
with housing, that it would have to be more limited than what this proposal is. I mean, I would be willing to look at this being mixed use if we had more space as commercial and a little less, but I do think could be a good buffer.
I always think mixed use should be, in my opinion, it should be a 50-50 mix at a minimum. Otherwise, it's not really mixed use.
So in this proposal is,
Less townhomes, more mixed.
yeah,
use.
so more
Yeah.
commercial and less townhomes. That's something we.
There's our thought
I would
process.
consider looking at that had less townhomes and more commercial.
Yeah, get rid of that single standing, so then you got like the 2 rows and then that single standing row by itself right there.
What can you put on, if you did 50%, Noah, what would you be able to now put in that area? Would that expand the marketability of the lot?
Oh,
Ooh,
be
yeah, right
serious.
next to
We're
each
throwing
other.
it again.
So you're
throwing-
asking what would fit on 1.5 acres commercially?
Yes.
Coffee shop.
Well,
From my
this,
heart.
this site, does not have a lot of frontage, you know, it's long and skinny, so the deeper you get, but the unique aspect of this site is you do have visibility from the freeway.
Mhm.
So the things that drive commercial is access and visibility.
Mhm.
So you have great access off of 2000 near a freeway. So that would mean commercial property, but further you get in, the retail gets worse and worse.
Right.
The
So
more,
there are other commercial uses that might want exposure as you drive by, but they end up being maybe more like flex industrial.
So
Or.
let me ask this a different way. What
Maybe.
would going from a 3/4 acre commercial pad to an 1.5 acre commercial pad create a more viable product?
no, but a 3.5 acre pad opens up kind of almost everything.
Yeah, but that's not what he's looking at.
Well,
Wow.
that's what it was zoned as.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the assessor's
So
gonna
you-
say.
It's almost a church with a coffee
So
shop.
if you leave it as it was zoned, then it would be appealing to a lot of businesses.
Yeah, the frontage piece is gonna be the most viable for retail. The further you get away from the frontage, the worse it is. So if you're asking if we can get, you know, 2 good commercial, maybe, I mean, you can see to the south, UDOT, see that little strip? UDOT actually owns that and it lines up with the other roads, so we think that will be either another.
That'll be a whole road.
Paired. Yeah, so, Brody, if you can go to the aerial, maybe that will show the parcel data or even.
But once you have a whole road there, that whole thing now it doesn't have frontage on the main road, but it does have
Well,
road access.
that road is not on our transportation master plan, so it might become, you know, a private shared driveway,
drive.
kind of like, you know, over by the movie theaters where you go into the roundabout, it might be like a private, or it could be publicly dedicated as a 60-foot right of way. I think they've partitioned that parcel off to gain
probably
access
ask
into
them.
the other UDOT owned properties back there. And so if there is a road there, you know, maybe that helps improve the access there, improve the commercial viability is the deeper part of the property, but there's a lot of moving parts there of what the other properties are gonna do.
And it looks like,
Okay, so remember that this is his chance to consult with council.
Sure.
Did you have other questions? I don't think you're getting what you want here,
No,
but.
it's all helpful. So I appreciate
Yeah.
the comments so far. I mean, just to be quite blunt, we're a residential developer, so our primary
Then why should you buy commercial property?
potentially do some residential. Let's see how it goes.
That's a gamble.
We haven't bought it yet. Anyhow, 3/4 of an acre is not an uncommon sized pad. We've kind of looked at just other pads in the area around that do them. I think you can get more than just, you know, a gas station on there. I know like over by where I live, actually in Syracuse Springs, they're doing quite a few actually even drive-through spaces on that size. It's a little more compact, but I mean, there's plans and options we could probably look at down the road on that. With other commercial partners that we have. Anyhow, really, I guess what we're trying to get a feel for is this something that the city would want? Is this zoning something that we go for the flexibility? I think the mixed use zone allows the flexibility on units as well as the commercial, so.
You'll get a lot of public pushback. There's just no question. I've heard from already some people in this area that have asked about this and you'll get a lot of pushback.
Well, I think that I'm not so opposed to a buffer zone from commercial to housing.
Yeah.
It is a good transition to go into some more higher density before you hit the commercial, but I don't think that there's enough commercial with this plan.
Yeah, in our experience here with these small acreage commercial paths, we've been inundated with the gas stations.
Yeah.
And so.
So I got a question though, like you said, the further away from the frontage road that you get back towards the back of the property, it's less likely to have as much successful retail. So if it was to be in half, what would it be a higher probability that the businesses in the front would be more successful? That way, and having the back half residential, because we don't want to put businesses somewhere that we know they're likely gonna fail.
Well, what I'm seeing here is,
How's that? I know I answered my question.
no,
Thank you. No,
Okay, sorry, awkward. So I'd be happy to answer your question. I think, I'm not a commercial real estate broker,
I'm aware.
and I can weigh in on what my opinion is, you know, I
In
think
case
that-
you a lot of money for your opinion, so I'd be happy to hear it.
go down.
Yeah, like I already said, I think that the deeper commercial might struggle for retail, but I think it's definitely viable for commercial, and that's why we're general plan for it.
There's other commercial uses.
But let me ask you this. So if I see off of Parkview Drive, there is a road that looks like it was designed to continue on. It's right there in the bottom right corner.
Yeah,
And you have the road off out of the other development, Burke Hill Lane. If those connected, would that now make this a little more viable
For commercial.
for commercial? If that was a
All
road that ended up
commercial?
on the,
That's hypothetical. If it's gonna.
well, this whole thing is hypothetical.
all-
That's why we're talking about it,
Yeah, but we're looking at what's there at the moment.
which is nothing.
So if we look at our
There's a
crystal
road.
ball of how we think the whole properties surrounding this are going to develop, I mean, I can give you an indication of what I think. So you have a stub road, you can see, that road will continue through. And like I said, we're not sure if these are gonna continue through as 60-foot public right of ways, or if there's some sort of planned development, you know, there might be shared drives. To the north of the site, that's gonna be a park and ride owned by UDOT, so they're gonna have driveways. And then the property surrounding the subject property, that's owned by UDOT, and they're going to, my guess, in the next little bit, they'll surplus that off. The
So where
property to the
was,
south is owned by the Thanes.
where's the park and ride? I'm sorry.
It's directly north. You can see it's actually already a
Okay, I see it.
bunch of road base and staging and stuff for the freeway.
Perfect spot for a coffee shop.
Yeah, so I think there's,
Actually,
if you look at
I
our
don't think you.
general plan map,
So
There's-
heartbroken.
there's no question that, you know, there's commercial viability and like we've talked about, it's. Sometimes you have a transition between commercial and single family areas. You know, and it's a little bit of a crystal ball of how much commercial is viable. In the past, we've always just kind of said, well, let's make sure we don't lose out on any commercial. And so that's the crystal ball. And, you know, like I said, the market will dictate, you know, how much commercial that really is viable.
Okay. We're way over time, so thank you. Let's move on to review
Like our
our
meetings go to
proposed,
6:45.
excuse me. For somebody who's always calling others for talking over, you're talking over everybody else.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
We are going to go on to review discussion of draft project area for the 2500 CRA. Noah, if you agree.
So nothing new here. Remember last work session, we talked about the basics of what we're trying to do at the 2500 West. It's a 60-40 split. We've been engaging with some of the taxing entities. We've been having some good positive responses. But before we can enter into any interlocal agreements, we need to make sure that we adopt our project area. And before we adopt it, we need to also have a public hearing. And so what's in the packet is the draft plan from Zions. There's two documents. There's a budget document and then there's a plan document. The plan, you know, uses a lot of words to kind of describe what we know about the property and why it's going to be a good idea and what we anticipate to go in there. And the budget really anticipates, you know, what the revenues will be. We think that we'll have $20 million to use on infrastructure to get some economic development going in the area. So it's been really positive so far. And you know, this is our third time seeing it. You know, last year we authorized this plan to move forward. And then a couple weeks ago, we kind of bounced those initial numbers off you. So we haven't really changed course. We're just kind of getting more details. as we chug along. So if there's any questions or comments or concerns about where we're at, now's the time to do it. But if we're all good, we'll move this on to the next voting meeting and we'll adopt this as a adopted plan and budget.
We do have some approvals already, which is great. We have visited with 3 of the entities already, and one has fully approved. The others gave us a positive nod, and the official meeting is coming up.
So to formalize those, we'll have interlocal agreements with each taxing entity, but that will come. We'll either batch them or we might do each one. If you,
We have to have all of the taxing
We do have
entities
to have
agree.
them all,
Yeah.
which is why we're coming here, because once we got them all and then our own council debated it. So we want to make sure we've got you guys first.
I'm good. Yeah.
I like it.
thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to, we have been talking about this fee in lieu of for some time, and I know Bree, you had some concerns. Did you want to kick off with some of your research?
Sure. So last time we talked about this, I know it was thrown out there that we or for me to look into going back to our system where we only allowed for water shares to be provided to allow development to occur. So I do think it is an option that we can go back. However, because we have opened up the possibility of this fee in lieu, I think that will generate more challenges to the statute or ordinance than prior, just because we have been able to thus far enter into purchase contracts for water. We haven't been denied any of those, but that's not to say we may not be denied those contracts in the future. And part of the reason that this came up as well is because Weber Basin has proposed a new contract, which is a capital charge contract with us. So rather than us having these fee in lieu charges that we're just going to Weber Basin and just purchasing the contract for that specific project, the capital charge would be putting money up front into Weber Basin's infrastructure, and then we'd be paying along as we go. So if that were something that the council was interested in, I do think that would be more of an impact fee that we'd be charging developers rather than this fee in lieu of the water shares. So we would have to do some analysis and put
The
that.
proportionality stuff.
And we still are required, because whether we're making them do all water shares or rights versus the fee in lieu, we still are always tasked with making sure it's proportionate to our need. So we will always have to do that kind of calculation. One thing with not allowing for any fee in lieu is there will, I think, be the situation where requiring all water shares might be an over exaction depending upon the size of the land, just because they can't go out, get the exact water share and acreage that we require, or
So would you suggest we do it to a certain amount, like a certain amount of acreage?
so right now, that's sort of what we do. The problem with what we're doing right now is that we contemplated for District 3 water, which is far cheaper. So if we kept something similar to what we have in providing this fee in lieu, we might just have to recalculate the amount that the fee is.
Yeah, to make it 10 years.
And try and estimate what it'll cost 10 years from now.
A little bit. So we just have to make sure the fee is commensurate with what the water share would be, while also accounting for what it's going to cost the city.
So what I meant was if they have to have 3 acre feet per acre, right, when they do it. So up to, if we did that up to, say, 40 acres or however much, and then after that, we do it in lieu of. But requiring them to have, and it's because it shouldn't be too excessive for them to get 120 shares of water to develop. Once we can identify what would be excessive, like at that point,
What
do
would be
in lieu
over.
of, yeah,
Mhm.
they could pay in lieu of. But if they're developing something smaller than like 50 acres, they should be able to get that amount of shares. It shouldn't be too excessive to ask them to do that.
So, and that's one requirement currently with our code is if they have the ability to get the water or they have the water to convey, we require that. They convey that. They don't get to pick the fee in lieu if they have water share. Yeah, right.
But how do we determine if if they're telling us like, yeah, we've looked at every source to find some?
Well, it's with.
Or is
it's
it
with
just like,
that
we're gonna
population.
trust the
It's-
developer to be honest with
Yeah,
us?
it's with that.
They have to do some due diligence.
Yeah. And right now, our ordinance requires that we have a contract in place to purchase the water. It's not necessarily the way we are set up. Robert, I believe, is going quarterly to contract for these
Right now, we're just doing annually.
annually.
They can do go quarterly if we want to go.
Yeah, Weaver Basin's okay with quarterly.
Okay, so that's the other thing, I don't believe we're stalling development right now to make sure we have the contract in place prior. We're just hoping that we can rely on that.
But fundamentally,
contract
should I finish?
Mhm. Well, I'm just saying, the fee in lieu should, in theory, per our ordinance, stall development until we get that contract in place. That's not necessarily been happening. And I don't believe that delay in making sure that we have the contract would necessarily be a winning challenge for a developer if we give them the option of, well, you don't have to delay it if you get the water share.
Right.
Then we
Yeah, because then it's the water share.
Right. But we can, if the straight water share option is something the council is looking for, we can carve out an exception in the code for that instance where requiring that certain water share might be an overt exaction that we would then revisit or at least allow an appeal for, that we could then look at on a project by project basis.
So do you have a recommendation then? I mean, it sounds like we can get around the zero in lieu fee option, but then it exposes us a little bit or makes us have to then go to the exaction test and
Right,
opens us up.
so I have. So all of our options have very defensible positions as far as why we would do one or the other. I don't have an exact case on point to say I absolutely know that this would be challenged and we'd prevail. So there's a little bit of a risk, and I think just in the sheer fact that we've opened it up in the past to what our current code is, it at least gives the developers probably a perception that like, well, no, you can do this.
I guess my question is, at a fundamental level, are we allowed to say, if you don't have water for your land, you can't develop on it? Is that
So
defensible?
I do think that would be challenged as a regulatory taking.
So you're allowed to, so,
And the reason is because they can go get water.
Yeah,
There is water available,
Well, I think what
Sure.
he's saying is
or we can go get it.
right. So the question really comes down to if they don't offer up water and they say, I just can't get water, we still have to have water as a city.
Yeah.
We can't say a land is going to not require water. So I think isn't the burden of on them to say this is where the water can come from?
I think it is.
That's a
I think the
requirement of
concern
building.
is that Weaver
you
Basin.
find your own lumber, you
provides
find
a
your own water.
means for water to be facilitated, and we're
through
But
the,
it-
we're not through the
but are-
city.
We're not allowing it.
Are we required to take that on 100%? Because it's so far we have not. We've said you have to come up with a minimum 75% or 80%.
2/3, I think.
Yeah,
Like right now, it seems like you could say, if you don't have water for your land and we can't get any, you can't build.
I mean, if you don't have water for it, what are you gonna pump to it? Like, if you don't have, you can, water is life. If you don't have water on that land, of course you can't put people living there. So no, you can't.
So,
Yeah, you can't build.
so one of the arguments I think that developers might make is, we require developers to hook into our secondary system. So, perhaps if that wasn't a requirement, then it's one of those, you're on your own for water, but there are a lot of really,
But that's where we
Good
get their water
reasons.
shares, right? It's
Yeah.
because they connect into our system.
because they connect.
So it's a trade.
But I think there would be a lot of cons to not requiring them to connect into our system, right? Like, we'd get rockscapes and no plans, and we'd get people using sink water to go.
Later to us, asking us to connect again later.
Right.
That's what we
So,
do.
Using culinary to water their plants outside.
Oh my gosh.
so,
That's what Layton does.
it's just not a great situation, just based on our water situation, but I do think
So
we
be,
can go back to the water shares only. We would just have to carve out an exception, and our code has in Title 10 and Title 8 appeals processes for all of the administrative decisions we have. So,
Is the capital cost contract already being utilized anywhere? Or is that?
I believe Layton, I
Yeah.
reached out to their attorney from a finance, I'm not the finance person, but it makes a lot more sense probably from a finance position to go the capital charge route.
Maintains the system.
Yeah,
Commensurate with the long-
because with the capital charge contract, the big capital portion of that fee is all lump sum up front, and then we're only billed on an annual basis in perpetuity, just the annual operations and maintenance fee. You know, instead of what we're doing now, we're taking 10, quote unquote, 10 or 12 years worth
Projecting it up front.
and projecting it, but after that 12th year,
It's all on us.
we're paying the capital
Yeah,
and the
something
operations and maintenance
Yeah.
every year in perpetuity,
which is very.
Not sustainable.
Yeah.
which is not good financially for the city in the long term.
Yeah.
But, so I think this is my recommendation, and there are, like Bree said, there are some legal ramifications with, I think, almost all of these options that we have to consider. What we're doing now, I don't think is feasible with just going, now that Weaver Basin has gone to District 4. So instead of 10 years worth, we're probably only gonna get like maybe 4 years worth. Because
For the
of
same
cost
price.
For, in order to equate the fee in lieu versus the shares.
Which puts a greater financial burden on the rest of the citizens who've already paid in.
Right, so I don't think what we're doing now is financially a good way to go. If we just require shares, like your question, Jordan, if we said, okay, then you just have to have shares or nothing. I feel like, and this is the whole reason we started the fee and lieu program early on, was there is a mechanism available out there to get water for that development. And we're sort of arbitrarily making it not possible for the developer to access it.
challenge that if they can't get the shares.
Because we're the ones preventing them from accessing it. And so I could see the challenge of being, you know, we may still win, but it'd be tough. The capital purchase option, I think, makes sense if, and this is an issue I think the mayor brought up. If we make some sort of requirement that they can't actually build the phase that is attributed to the contract water until Weaver Basin signs it. So
I actually like that.
they might have to
Yeah.
wait till that end of the quarter before they can actually develop that phase of the project. And under our current ordinance, 2/3 of the water has to come in the form of shares anyway, so they can probably start on phase 1 and probably phase 2. And in the meantime, we'll go through Weaver Basin, get the contract water, and they'll be fine.
Just guarantees that we don't
Yeah.
end up on the denied side
Yeah.
without water.
Okay.
So and I think so from a financial and kind of administrative perspective, I think that's probably the best way to do it. The problem is now we're running into this issue is that looks and acts and smells like an impact fee. And so.
But is it an impact fee?
No.
That's-
No, it's a
that's
water
the
fee.
biggest challenge, that's the question.
It seems to be a fair argument that it is.
Yeah, so there, yeah. I think that's what will be the argument is that is an impact.
For the
fee.
But they have an option to not pay it if they come with water.
Right.
It's not a
That's
required
allowed,
fee.
but
Yeah, where impact fees are required.
Yes.
Right. And so that's the gray area, but I think,
It's not great. It's pretty spelled out.
I think if we. The other issue is it's not even our system improvements, it's Weaver Basin system. improvements. It's actually their impact fee.
I read judge, I'd side with us.
Me too.
Anything else?
But if that sounds like a good way to go, rather than just go there, I think we probably need to explore a couple things and then, vet some things before we enact it.
So this can't be voted on tonight, so I'm gonna put this off to another agenda, but I think that we've kind of explored what we need to do to move forward with our research.
We're just moving right along.
Okay, the next is a request from the police department to consider purchase of speed trailers. Chief, would you join us?
Mayor and council, thanks for the opportunity. I know you've all seen the packet thing, so I'm just gonna hit high points with it. It is not a budget increase. It is simply a budget transfer request, but because this will be a capital project and therefore it isn't money that you've actually seen for that purpose, I requested the chance to get this in front of you for your consideration. The amount on this did go up slightly when we put in for the 3. And the reason being, as dumb as this sounds, if we order 1, it comes by the salesman, towed by the truck. If we order more than 1, it has to come commercial freight. So the amount is 26,700.
So 3 separate deliveries we're talking.
No, it comes, I know, right?
Yeah, I know.
That's exactly what we said.
I offered to pick it up.
Where is it?
The the company on this one, they have state bid and they say that trying to do something like that violates their state bid agreements.
You got a 20 footer. We can get all 3 of them on that sucker.
Take the spray paint and drive on its own.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
Krista.
That was a shot at Cresta over there. She was like, stop.
Oh.
They were
If
Chris.
it's
Very
hurricanes,
clever
way
to see it running down the road by itself.
That was, I think.
I get a full people.
So council, this does not need a formal approval, but we did, the chief requested that he at least praise you
It's a good
and make
idea.
sure you get your good nod in. So are we okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, just to be clear on that, so that technically this is just an internal transfer that the administration can do on our own anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
But because it was a capital and then.
We want to be transparent.
We just want to make sure.
Actually, probably make us way excited that we're getting speed trailers.
Actually, we are, right?
That would be super excited. That's really
Number
exciting.
of calls that I've had the last couple of days about traffic.
Speed trailers, we need them.
We think delivery sometime, they put the high end at 60 days, so
Oh, nice.
based on current events, probably.
You're not the only people on our roster that are like,
Actually, to
let's
get
see
stuff
what
in a
you
reasonable
guys set
time.
up.
Okay, thank you. Cresta, would you come and report to us on Heritage Days?
That was great.
It was.
That's
Oh,
yeah.
what were you gonna do?
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
That's all you should do. Like, perfect.
The next time I'm sending up chief to ask for money, that was lots easier.
We can drive.
As long as I transfer.
Fine.
Oh, that's how it- So, Heritage Days really was great this year. We feel like, just so you guys know, we had a total of 89 total vendors that came. 68 of those were non-food and 21 were food vendors. We're looking at maybe decreasing a little bit of the food vendors because there was a lot, and people, and some of the food vendors complained because they don't get as much, but there was a lot of people there. We had the golf tournament and the pickleball, which were hosted by others, which was great because that means we didn't have to, and all the prizes and everything was purchased by them. So we didn't have that. We tried something new this year, which was the movie. That was a hit, and we're gonna figure out how we can get more because there was such a long wait list to do it. But people liked it because they didn't have to sit out and get eaten alive by mosquitoes. And they gave away free popcorn to everybody. And
Oh, really?
yeah,
That's awesome.
so we did it on Tuesday, so it's obviously cheaper. And then we bought the tickets because we bought it for what it would have cost us to buy the night at the movie outside. And then when they went in, they got little free bags of popcorn for everybody that came in. So
I did feel like since we didn't, when did we usually do that? Well, it was on Friday night.
usually do it Friday night.
I felt
9:30,
like
10.
the entertainment there didn't have the crowd they used to have when we
Yeah.
did do the movie.
I think the problem more so Friday night, not because the movie does not, by the time it's gone, everybody's gone. It was the
Oh.
wind that came in.
Right.
And
Oh.
a lot of people thought we canceled.
Oh,
So much.
it was a
There
heck
was
of a
like
show.
blast that on
I
Facebook.
loved that show.
Yeah, it was really good entertainment. They missed out on it, but usually Fridays are a little bit busier.
Yeah.
But, the children's night, which was the night before, was, I don't know, it was insane.
Yeah.
That and my 18 years of being over Heritage Days and having children's night was the most people we'd ever seen at children's night. We're gonna have to bring in more bounce houses and things. It was crazy.
I still think we need to bring in the adoption.
Yes,
clinic, the pet
yeah.
adoption.
And we
Because
did,
those animals, apparently they had a rough night.
yeah, I felt
With
really
so many
bad for the
kids.
petting zoo.
Maybe
Really
not,
bad
maybe not on
for
kids' night.
the kids.
Maybe not a kid's night.
Look,
They ended up
Maybe
leaving
somebody
early
adopted.
because they were, the animals had been terrified.
Well, I don't know about
Oh, yeah.
So we do have to figure out more for that, but it went really, really well. We had 54 parade entries, which was more than that because a lot of people did 2, but 54 people signed up for the parade. The pancake breakfast Retmeister puts on, which they come in and do it all. This year it was for Heath and they made $3,700.
Nice. I think they ran out of food.
Yeah, it
It
was,
was like, we're about to run out.
yeah, it
That's
was
good.
crazy.
I left.
The most we've ever made, I think, is like 700. So that was cool.
Wow.
Yeah, this is like
Great.
big time bigger, yeah.
I love- Well, and it's, I asked what it was always for in the past, it was for parks, and
Yeah.
I think that makes people think, oh, I wanna.
No, and they didn't really have a reason. When it was Chloe's, it was a little bit more they went towards, but, and that's going forward, that we were either gonna do that or the teen center. But then what happened with the donation to teen center was really great because the bounce and bins that came in, the school volunteered for them to come in and help do all of the volunteer work of letting the kids go on the bouncing stuff. And so they are going to donate $2,200 to the teen center.
My goodness, that's
That's the
awesome.
money that they
So
made.
that's
So-
like a,
yeah,
two
it
birds.
was a win-win. They're
Nice.
gonna send a check right to them. We had $6,100 in sponsorships, and that was just in cash money. And then we had in kind from like Texas Roadhouse did the Miss Syracuse pageant, but they also did our senior luncheon for free. Everything was free. Warehouse 22 did the desserts for that. And then F5 did all, like I said, did all of the pickleball. They did all the awards, which was great and got people interested in the businesses. And then Black Island Farms always brings the train and the bounce house and the Brent Meister. So we made $16,540 for Heritage Days to offset the cost of what we had the budget.
That's amazing.
So we think it was a real success. I hope that you
There
guys
was a
enjoyed
zip
it.
line.
And there was a zip line.
What? There was a zip line? I walked all
See,
over that
we're
place.
not
and didn't see
talking
a
zip line anymore, because you didn't even come when we brought it.
I
No,
don't,
no.
did not see a zip line, so I don't.
It was the-
Where was it?
It was the largest inflatable. Like
Oh,
the-
it was an
the-
inflate,
the
no
huge
wonder I
amount-
didn't know.
It was the largest zip line west of the Mississippi.
So, we'll see, Miss Prescott, that entire time, as much time as I spent in that park, I did not see a single piece of trash on the ground even once. So that is a huge kudos to your team.
And
It was epically clean over there. Everybody was super polite. They were super helpful. Officer Russell and Officer Hill, super polite. So many of the vendors mentioned to me how they had walked around and talked to them and things like that. And it was, you guys did such a great job. It was beautifully done.
And that's what I have to think. It's not just Parks and Rec. I mean, we couldn't do it without police, fire, finance, I mean, everyone just throws in and. We write the checks. And I'm the only one that didn't get a shout out tonight. And I told Kara how wonderful it was to have to not have to worry about the posts and stuff, and it really went out, and I think that really helped us. It brought.
Yeah.
I think
That looks
really
great.
I think
Nice
it
job.
really time, yeah. helped.
You are worth your weight.
I know, and then the next day she was already posting because she came to everything and showed pictures of what happened.
Yeah.
That
It was
was great,
amazing,
too.
and so I was very grateful for everybody's help. We think it went really well, and we'll do it again next
Do
year.
it again next.
We'll do it again next year.
Great job.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Celebrating 21 years tomorrow.
21 years tomorrow.
Wow.
Okay, and with that, we are adjourned.
Oh.